the thing that if my legs are in book is that it has like this, it has this and like you get like whatever, like whatever letter it's at, and here you have to trace through here that the letter that you're doing, and you have to trace it in this, and like the bottom one is like I think like mixed up ones, and this and there's I think begin, and then this one is ending, and also like things like I feel like green yellow, and then it's great. Great. I like this book because when every week we do a different letter, and this is about about socks, stamps, and every row starts a different area. First row starts with beginning, second row starts with ending, and the middle row can start with beginning, middle, and beginning. Or it could just be middle, or it could be middle, or all kinds of different things. And also, mommy will say a letter, a word, and I'll write down about what it makes, about what letter makes the sound. So one of the things that I like about this page is that I like how you get to like memorize how to write each letter, and I think some of them are kind of satisfying to me, and it's like really fun doing like all the curves on some of them. I like this game because like it makes it really fun to read stuff, and like it's like I like how it's like at my own pace, so like nothing's too hard to read.
Hi there, I'm Lynna Sutherland, homeschool mom of 8 and author at Your Large Family Homeschool. And today I just wanted to hop on video real quick and share with you about the Pride reading program and why I have absolutely fallen in love with this program for our homeschool. I originally found out about Pride reading when I was asked to do a review of it. And whenever I'm asked to review a curriculum, I always use it for long enough to get a feel for the program and how it works so that I can give an accurate review and share the pertinent details that people would need to know if they were considering this for their homeschool. I don't always continue using the products that I'm reviewing because sometimes we already have something in place that's working, or perhaps it's an extracurricular that we don't necessarily have time to keep in our schedule. But Pride was quite a different situation. After we finished using Pride reading for the review, I loved it so much that not only did I continue using the materials that we'd gotten for free as a part of the review, but I actually went back and out of pocket purchased more levels of the curriculum for other children because I felt like it was such a solid program and it did exactly what I'd always been hoping that a reading program would do, but I'd never found one that would do it. I was actually homeschooled for part of my education, and my mother taught me to read using a reading program that was Orton Gillingham based, which Pride Reading is. And so when I began homeschooling, I looked into the program that she had used. And while I think it's a great program, it was a little bit confusing and overwhelming. And it seemed like there was so much to do every day, and I had a hard time juggling all of it. And essentially, it just didn't feel sustainable. It didn't feel realistic for me to do all of these activities every day, especially if I was at a stage where I was teaching 2 or 3 children to read at one time, which can happen when you have a large family. And so I had tried various approaches. I'd tried to adapt things, and I had tried a couple of other reading programs that were more scripted, and still it seemed like we had to choose between either doing everything, and it would take so long, it would be overwhelming for me and the child, it just wasn't sustainable, or we could do just a part of it, which might have been great, but then it would mean that we were missing out on other aspects of language arts that I really wanted my kids to have included in their instruction. So I was really astonished when I found Pride Reading at how it really covered all the things I wanted covered, and it did it efficiently, and it did it in a routine way where the kids began to know what to expect, and to be familiar with the types of activities they were doing. And I've loved it so much, we're going on using it for the second year in a row. So today I just want to share with you about it because I bet you'll love it too. So the official Pride reading program has 5 levels. This is the book that we were originally given for review. It's level 1, it's the yellow book. And then there are 4 other levels that come after that. At this point in our homeschooling journey, we've used levels 1 and 2, the yellow book and the orange book. And also I jumped back and purchased for my youngest 2 the beginning letters and sounds level, which is kind of like a precursor to the reading program, and it is made for pre-readers. It's made for kids who have not yet started reading, which is exactly where my youngest 2 were, and it was the perfect setup for them. One of the cool things about the Pride reading program, including the beginning letters and sounds level, is that when you purchase any of these levels from Pride Reading, first of all, you can choose to purchase a physical copy of the teacher guide if you want to, but I found it much easier and much less expensive to purchase the digital version. So all I have to do is log into the Pride Reading website, and I have access right there to all of my digital teacher content, and I actually use it on my phone. I just pull up on my phone the lesson for the day, and I can scroll through on my phone as my student has the book in front of him or her. It's been super convenient and helpful. Another really cool thing is that not only when you purchase the program, not only do you get immediate access to the digital teacher resources if you purchase them that way, Pride will also give you access to a teacher training program, essentially. So it's a program that will help you as a homeschool mom to understand how the program works, to learn some about Orton Gillingham, to learn what are the different kinds of activities that are going to be involved in teaching this and how to use those activities. There are a ton of sample videos that will tell you, this is what it looks like when you do this activity. And it's a teacher and a student working together, so you're getting to review this. It was very thorough, but very efficient and concise. So it didn't take a ton of time. It took maybe under an hour to go through it, but it was very easy to follow. And by the time I finished the Pride Reading program training, I felt very well equipped to go forward. And I really appreciated that, because even though the lessons are very well laid out and very scripted, it was really helpful for me to just take a little bit of time before the materials arrived to prepare myself for how I was going to use the program. And I felt once I got the materials in my hand, like I was completely equipped and ready to go to start teaching. So let me tell you about some of the things that I really like about both the beginning letters and sounds level and then each of the levels in the official reading program. So every one of the lessons that's included in each of the levels has 4 parts. The first part is a lesson overview, and this is primarily for you, the teacher. It will just give you an overview of what's going to be covered in this lesson. It will give you some tips. It even has an audio file to play the phonetic sound that you're working on or the blend that you're working on in that lesson so that you can hear it being pronounced correctly in case you need some help with that. There are also online games that are included with every level. So whatever letter sound or blend or syllable type that you're working on, there are online games, and I have my kids practice those on their own, so that just gives them a little extra reinforcement that doesn't need my immediate participation with them. After the lesson overview, there are then 3 parts that you're going to do with your students, 1 a day. So there's the introduction, the practice, and the reinforcement. And you do that with every new letter sound or syllable type or blend group. Introduction, practice, reinforcement. And again, like I said, they begin to follow a really similar pattern. So kids are able to anticipate what's going to be coming next, what they're going to do when they start out with a new letter or sound, what they're going to do on the next day, and then what they do on the last day with that letter or sound. So let me give you a few examples. In the beginning letters and sounds, the first day you're going to introduce a new letter. There is a word that goes with it, and then there's a picture that goes with it, and then the word of that picture. And so this just gives them an opportunity to connect a picture with that beginning sound, and they'll be repeating the sound, the word, the letter, the sound, and the word along with you, and then practicing on their own. Also, every day, they're going to have cards that they review at the beginning of each lesson. So they're going to begin with just the 1. It's just the letter B on a card. and then they'll add to it as they learn more letters. They keep on adding. The cards that come with the beginning letters and sounds program are actually all that you'll need to use all the way through the program. It's a pretty chunky box. So at the beginning, you'll just be using a few and you'll add to it as you go along, but you don't have to continue purchasing new sets of letter sound cards because they're all included in the initial packet that you get when you purchase the first program, whatever program you purchase first. There are some other things that they can begin to expect happening in every single lesson that they go through. So for example, in the introduction lesson, they're always going to be tracing with their finger the new letter that they're learning. And then in the practice lesson, they'll always be tracing the sample letters that are given. And then in the reinforcement lesson, they'll always be writing their own version of the letters. So they go through this every time, finger tracing, pen tracing, and then writing their own letters. So they are used to that pattern. And the nice thing is that they're not actually, this page is not one day's worth of work. They do this part one day, this part the next day, this part the next day. So it just breaks up the activity so that they're not doing pages and pages per day. They're just doing one part of a page per day. And the same thing is true with this page where they are identifying sounds. So it varies a little bit based on what the letter or the syllable is that they're working on or whatever. But the first day, they're identifying letters at the beginning, sounds at the beginning of a word, and then they're identifying sounds at the end of a word, and then this one is called mixed sounds. So it might be at the beginning, it might be in the middle, might be at the end, and they're just finding where that sound is occurring within the word and circling it. So again, this is for pre-readers, so they can't read these words, but they're still learning to identify where the letter comes in the word and to hear that sound in the word, even though they can't read the whole word. There are tons of verbal and visual and active clues that go along with learning. So for example, usually during the practice lesson, they're going to be doing what's called sky writing, which is extending two fingers out, tracing the letter in the sky. When they're tracing the letter, they say the name of the letter, and then they underline it and make the sound. So again, it's just a whole body movement involved in shaping the letter and connecting that with the sound. There's also what we call palm tracing. So when they get ready to write some letters, sometimes they will be asked to palm trace. So, letter writing can be frustrating, especially when you're just learning to form a new letter. So palm tracing kind of gives you a low-risk way to practice forming that letter on your palm, and then mom can, watch and say, oh, let's start it up here, start up here. There are also lots of verbal and visual and even kinesthetic clues that go along with learning the letter sounds and how to shape them. So there will be a script that you'll read to your child as they're making a letter that might say something like around, up, down, hook, that will clue them in as to how they're making this letter. There are actual movements that go along with the letter sounds, and maybe like bouncing a ball and saying b, 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 or cutting with the fingers and saying k, k, k. So they're going to connect all of those different sensory inputs with how to make the letter, how to make the letter sound, and so forth. It's really a great integration of many different learning styles. Also, another thing that they do a lot of is listening for sounds. So there will be a lot of times where I'm saying a word and they're listening to tell me thumbs up or down if they hear this sound at the beginning of the word or at the end of a word. They might be listening for, I might give them three parts of a word like ah, t, and they're repeating those three sounds and then blending them. So even before they're looking at words on paper and reading the sounds and blending them, they're practicing blending those sounds together. They're just practicing that skill of blending. They also, right from the very beginning, are working on sound dictation. So I'm going to say a sound, and they're going to write the letter that goes with that sound. So it's a perfect forerunner to spelling because they're already learning. When I hear this sound, I'm going to write this letter. So I might just say k or b or f, and then they're writing the letter that goes with that sound. So they're already training their brain to hear a sound and write a letter to go with it. At the end of every lesson, they're going to sing the alphabet song, and they're going to connect the capital letter that goes with the lowercase letter that they've been learning. So their primary practice is with that lowercase letter, but they do get to wrap that capital letter in at the end of each lesson so that they're aware of the capital letters that go with each lowercase letter. There's also a part where they're listening to a story. I read a whole story that includes a lot of whatever sound it is that we're working on, and they're listening for as many words as they can remember that begin with that sound. So a lot of things that they really enjoy. And again, you're practicing this one letter sound, but you're doing it from all these different angles, all of these different modalities, so that they really are connecting to that learning in so many different ways. And they really have enjoyed using the program as well. The yellow and orange and all of the levels beyond that continue to follow a pretty similar pattern. They are more complex as children begin with actual reading, and they do include a lot more instruction. The beginning letters and sounds probably take 10 minutes or less per day. And so far, our experience with levels 1 and 2, it's probably about 20 minutes a day, but still very doable. Definitely something that you can just adapt as needed for whatever the attention span or the ability level of your child is. But once again, as with the beginning letters and sounds, the other levels are going to follow that same pattern of a lesson overview, which tells you as a parent what you're going to be teaching in that lesson. And then 3 lessons to do with your student: the introduction, the practice, and the reinforcement. Once again, there are going to be similar activities that you do in each of those parts of the lesson that your students will become familiar with, and they'll know what to expect, and they'll know how to implement those ideas with the new sounds or syllables that they're working on. So the lesson overview, again, it always comes with online games that they can do on their own. The introduction lesson is going to teach them a new blend or a new syllable type or something like that. They're also going to be reading words. And one thing that's new in the beginning with the yellow level is that at the end of every lesson, there's a new game. And these are just, they're really similar. There's probably maybe 4 or 5 variations of the game. And some of them are kind of like a chutes and ladders or a connect four, read a word, mark it with your marker, and see who can get 4 in a row. Simple instructions, so it doesn't take a lot of time to learn how to play the game. But then what varies from game to game is what words that they're practicing and reading in that game. Also new with level 1 is letter tiles. They're going to have a whole little bag. It's really a nice bag. It's like a canvas bag about the size of a pencil pouch with a zipper, and it includes all the letter tiles that you will need from beginning at level 1 through the end. So you'll purchase that when you begin level 1, and then you'll be able to use that on throughout the rest of the program. And the letter tiles, again, are just a tactile way where they can bring down tiles to spell words on the back of the book. There are these spaces for words of various lengths, so they'll have the letter tiles laid out on the table beside them, and then they can pull down the proper tiles that they need to spell the words that you are dictating to them. Another thing that happens in beginning in level 1 is not just in every lesson, but in every part of every lesson. So at the end of the introduction, at the end of the practice, and at the end of the reinforcement, they're doing sound dictation, so they're continuing to practice that, but they're also doing word and sentence dictation. So this is just being wrapped in right as they go with every lesson, and of course it's going to include words and sounds that are emphasizing what they're learning in that lesson. But again, they're just practicing that through dictation. There's still the same palm tracing so that they get a chance to kind of try it out before it's written on paper, and you can give any guidance or correction you need to before they write it down. Also, in every introduction lesson, they're going to be reading words. In the practice lessons, they're going to be reading sentences. And then in the reinforcement lessons, they're going to be reading a story. And with both the sentences and the story, there are reading comprehension questions included in the teacher guide. So it's not just, can they pronounce these sounds out loud, but are they understanding what they're reading? There's also an opportunity, especially when they're younger in the yellow level, for them to sequence the story. So beginning, middle, end, what happened in the story, so that they're showing that they understand what they've been reading and what's happening in that story. Another thing that I really like about these main levels of the program is that there's fluency practice at the end of every lesson. So there are many pages of fluency at the end of the book, and they're going to go through and just work on smooth, not speed reading, like not speed at the cost of correctness, but just working on just picking up their pace, being able to read smoothly and fluently these words that relate to whatever it is that they're working on or studying at the time. And then also at the end of the reinforcement lesson, the reinforcement section of each lesson, there's going to be a progress check. And the progress check is basically just, have they mastered what it was that they were learning in that lesson? They're going to read over it real quickly, some words, some sentences, and you'll be able to tell if they've mastered what they were learning in that lesson and are ready to move on. Another thing that they do in every lesson in the beginning at level 1 and on up is what's called read words. And again, these are the most commonly read, R-E-A-D, words that come up the most often, let's say, in the English language. So I don't know if you can tell on the camera or not, but all of these words have kind of 2 check marks beside them. So what they do is when they read a new read word, and there's a whole kind of routine that you go through. We write the read word on the whiteboard that comes with the program. We tap it out on our arm. So for example, if we're learning to say, let's say there, T-H-E-I-R, we tap it out on our arm to spell it, and then we slide our fingers down our arm to say the word T-H-E-I-R there, T-H-E-I-R there. And so that's, again, reinforcing both with body movements and sounds, spelling the word, saying the word. And so once your child has read one of those read words, they would put a red check mark by it. And then after they've gone through a couple of lessons, they'll go back and have what's called a progress check, or an assessment rather, on their read words. So then they'd go back and read over all the read words they'd learned up to that point, and they put a black check mark over the ones they've mastered. So that's why this is a book that my daughter's finished. So you can see that she checked each one red as she initially learned it. And then we went back and put black check marks. I think we do, they do like sets of 9. So essentially every third lesson, you're going back and assessing the ones you've learned in the past 3 lessons, and then continuing on with red check marks until you go back and assess those in sets of 9 as we go through. And so these are, again, just the most commonly seen words in the English language. A lot of them are those words that are tricky, that they don't necessarily follow the typical phonetic rules, so they would be something that would be hard for a student to just sound out. So helping them to develop fluency with those most commonly seen English words really helps in their overall reading fluency and comprehension as they go. Another thing that's included in each lesson in the level 1 and above is a grammar lesson. So when they come to the end of one of their practice lessons, there's always going to be a grammar lesson included. And those have been, again, very simple, very efficient, just learning about a noun or a proper noun, capital letters and periods, or the subject agreeing with the verb, just a little something that's wrapping in those grammar concepts. And again, that was something that I found was often missing in other reading programs, and I really didn't want to have to get a completely different program to work on those things, especially at the younger ages when they're still learning to read. I'm happy to continue using this program. I'm really glad that we found it. I will continue to use it until my youngest 3 are done and are solid readers, and I would recommend it to anybody. I will put a link below this video of a full post on the Pride Reading Program so that you can see in more detail and pictures and everything, and of course all the links and everything so that you can find out how to get this program for your family, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as we have.